Hey, Crystal Nerd. Welcome back to the Crystal Clarity podcast. And I say that with love. So, if you're new, welcome. My name's Sarah Thomas, and I am a longtime healer and educator and acupuncturist. And I have a lot of experience with stones and crystals. Um, I'm here today to share that experience in regards to one big request that we have been having. My assistant just told me today that we've been having tons of requests for me to give my take on Andara crystals. And I'm going to do that today. I want to share with you if I think they're superconductors or scams. And I've been around them for a long time, actually. And I'm also going to do this episode just like I'm talking to my mom. That's who I'm going to imagine I'm talking to because she is someone that knows nothing about Andara crystals. So let me see if I can efficiently build this picture for anybody who's here who's, I don't know what you're talking about, what is an Andara crystal, and build this up and then take you somewhere that is really helpful for you. So, an Andara crystal is a special kind of crystal that was allegedly discovered by a woman in Northern California, and she discovered these crystals on her land. And there is, talk about her being part Native American and on this Native American land. So there's this, lore in the story about indigenous energy in this area. And she discovers these crystals on her land, and they look like glass. They look like all these different pieces of colored glass. I'm not sure exactly what colors she was finding originally, but the story is that she was finding these crystals of colored glass, and that she discovered, she was a medicine woman, and she discovered through her intuition and insight that these were magical crystals, and they have all of these magical properties. And she started using them for healing and multidimensional work and all of these things. And they're they look like if you found glass, how you can find beautiful little glass in a river, like bright aqua, bright blue, dark red. I mean, an Andara crystal can be any color, but it's typically beautifully colored and very transparent. It typically looks like something you would just want to hold up to the sun and look at the light of the sun through, just to soak in that color. So if you want to pause this and stop and Google Andara crystals, you will see that they have become this special trade crystal where it was, this woman up there started sharing them with other people, and then they started selling them, and there was enough to sell, and people got a hold of them, and everybody was having these magical experiences. And you can now Google or look up Andara crystal, and you'll see that there are still websites and places that are selling Andara crystals, like a very small piece of what looks like colored glass for $3,350, for a very small piece of colored glass. And sometimes they'll even have those little bubbles in it that would be like how you would think of blown glass or colored glass or cullet glass. So there is still, this belief out there that Andara crystals are full of magical powers and magical properties. And I've been all over the world to crystal and gem shows just for a long time, just being in this work. I've met so many people and their crystals, or crystals and their people, from all over the world. And I never bought any Andara crystals. I just kind of watched the movement. And people brought them into me as a practitioner and said, use this on me, and I have this, or what is this? I've been being asked this for years and years. So I've walked past many booths of Andara crystals in my life and admired the color, but knew that, what Andara crystals are claimed to be might not be that. They could just be glass, colored glass that people are selling for a lot of money. And that's the scam side of this. And if you look up Andara crystal, all you'll see is all these articles about scam. These are scam. These are scam. Okay. So one day I was at this giant gem show, and I walk up to this booth that's actually super vibrant and alive, and the guys at this booth were so shiny and bright. Um, their hearts were so open, their eyes were so alive, and they had all Andara crystals, and they were so psyched about them. And with their Andara crystals, this beautiful layout, all these pamphlets about monatomic elements, which I'll talk about in a second. Piles of monatomic powders were all on the table for everyone to see, scientific articles about what monatomic powders are and what Andara crystals are, beautiful music playing, like it was the vibe, right? They created this whole vibe at their place, and then they were very sweet and kind and authentic. And I, for the first time, was like, all right, I'm going to try these out because I like the energy of the people. I like the energy of these guys. And I took a couple pictures of them, and I was like, if I'm going to get Andara crystals anywhere, I'm going to get them here. This is the place I'm going to pick them out. So I actually picked out a chakra set. Like, I went around and picked out a red one, an orange one, a yellow one, and I picked this all out and put it together. And I took those and I took them home on the plane with me. I remember on the plane, like looking through them at the light. This aqua one was incredible, just blue. I just wanted to swim in this aqua color. And, one of the big things about Andara crystals that really does make them transformative is just that we are so tuned into color. Humans are so vibrationally tuned into color, and it does shift our energy field. And I think that might be one thing that's almost undeniable about Andaras, is that you get this color therapy with them. And I was getting that with the aqua Andara crystal. And I brought them back to my healing clinic, and I have stones all throughout my treatment room, like tables and tables of stones. So there's many things to look out and see. And I laid out this Andara chakra layout on the table. And when people come into my treatment room, I often, especially kids, but I'll often say, pick out what you like out of all these stones. What are you drawn to? What do you want to have in your treatment today? And even if I don't say that, people will just say, hey, what's that? Can I use that one today? And so there's like an interaction between all these stones that are out. And the Andara crystals got a lot of attention because they're so beautiful. It's like this whole transparent crystalline rainbow sitting out on the table. So people picked them up and people wanted to work with those. And I did many, many chakra layouts with my Andara chakra crystals over years as an experiment, right? To see, like, are there monatomic elements in these crystals? Do they have magical properties? What is this story? So it was my experiment. Now, I want to tell you that this is the results of my experiment, is that I did not have any extraordinary experience with that chakra layout. It was not extraordinary. It was not really, if I look at all the crystals that I've used and all of the different combinations and all the things, it's not something that I would say this was in the top 10 most extraordinary. Like, wow, we're having all of these wonderful experiences. There's a big connection happening here. It would not be in the top 10. It would not probably be in the top 20. And for me, it just wasn't extraordinary. Now, things happen in treatments, but I'm also doing other things, and there's all these other factors, and there's where the person is in their journey. And there's so many different factors going on in every treatment. So it's not like it's just what stones I'm using. But in general, I can say that those Andara crystals were not extraordinary for me. And that's just for me. And I think it's really important that we be like, okay, I don't have to just take on this bias that Sarah's talking. I don't have to take on Sarah's experience. You're your own artist, and you might have Andara crystals that you totally love. And everything comes down to relationship, and everything comes down to cultivation. So I'm going to talk about that in a second too. Now, I kept going with this, and slowly over time, I stopped doing that chakra treatment as much, doing that layout. And I met a friend along the way who I love so much. I just respected her so much. And she is just a great medicine person. She lives out in the West, and she does different modalities. And she's a huge crystal person and self-taught, totally tuned in. She also does land healing, earth grid work. And we were doing some of that together. And she's into sound, and she's into crystals, and she's just great. She makes elixirs. And she had this really deep connection with the Andara crystals. She had gotten some that were, for her, were opening these portals. She was having these astral experiences, and she was having, like, I remember all these experiences she was having with, and also with her young son, who was very young. He was like too young to be making things up. And there was a shift in consciousness in their house with these Andara crystals. And she had a relationship with them, and she did good work with them. There was something, they matched her in some way. she got in this process where she was in touch with the consciousness inside her Andara crystals. Like there's this certain light frequency, you could say, that she was now in relationship with. And she did this process where she built this medicine wheel in her yard, which is like a large rock grid. Imagine if I made a circle of stones in front of me that was like, just as big as my chest. Well, now imagine one that's as big as like 3 lengths of me. A huge stone wheel in her yard in the 4 directions, and she has this all tuned in, and she has all of these spiritual guides and allies and friends with mountains and friends with rivers, and she's a woo. And she makes this giant medicine wheel, and she has this process where she can take other stones and put it in the center of the medicine wheel and invite in that consciousness that is in the Andara crystals into those stones through the medicine wheel. So she has a process where she's like birthing Andara crystals in her medicine wheel, like calling in this light frequency that's in hers into other stones. Now, she did use glass like colored glass to call this energy into. And she was very clear, like, I'm just getting this colored glass from a glass place or some slag glass. But then I'm calling in this consciousness and working with this in this big medicine wheel. And these processes are alive, y'all. Gosh, it's a 10-minute episode. I wish I could go into it more, but I have to wrangle myself back. But nonetheless, she's making her own Andara crystals, and she didn't do this so she could sell them. She didn't make a website where she was charging $3,000 for every Andara crystal. She was working with them in ceremonies and events. She was giving them to like her patients. She was experimenting. And I think that it's when we think about Andara crystals and take that story and kind of weave it into how we might go forward, or is this a scam or a superconductor? I think that what the claim is, why these men that I liked that were like sweet and shiny had on their table these monatomic powders. The claim is that these real Andara crystals are full of monatomic elements. And I am obsessed with monatomic elements. This is just a daily, I have them right here on my desk. I love monatomic elements. I just put some on the camera. Actually, for those of you that are listening, I was just showing that they're on my desk. And that's a good little place for me to say, please don't ask me from this episode, where should I buy Andara crystals or where should I buy monatomic elements? I'm not supporting any brands or anything in there. Just go into your own resonance with this, okay? Trust yourself. But the idea is that there's monatomic elements inside Andara crystals, and monatomic elements are fascinating. They are elements, there's just a few elements on the periodic table that can exist in 3D form as one atom. I'll say it again. There's just a few elements on the periodic table. Gold is one of them. Copper is one of them. Silver is one of them, that can exist in 3D form as just one atom. Now, most of the material in form is atoms connected together. And we're talking about one singular atom walking around. So when there's one singular atom walking around by itself, these superconduct scalar energy, or they superconduct what we call ether energy. They superconduct what you could maybe loosely define as chi. It's this invisible energy that is running through everything, that is in the heart center of everything, and is connected through this giant grid of life. It's like the soup life energy that we all live in. It's an incredible topic. Scalar energy is something that I am obsessed with and believe in. Monatomic elements superconduct scalar energy. So even people that really truly understand the physics of monatomic elements, when they understand those physics, they say, oh my gosh, wow, this really is tapping into the unified field. And crystals are full of these. Certain soils are full of these. Soils, energy, mountains, there's a lot of monatomic elements in the natural world, and crystals are a place where there can be a lot of monatomic elements. So the claim is that Andaras have a lot of monatomic elements in them. And because monatomic elements superconduct unified field energy, That means you can enter a singularity through monatomic elements, or a place where time and space collapses. And when you're in a place where time and space collapses, like the eternal now, in the void, in the flux, you are in a space of all possibility. You can travel forward and backward through time. You can travel side to side in different dimensions. And that's how people are having these different multi-dimensional experiences and extraordinary experiences with monatomic elements. Now, the thing is, we just discovered this week that it's really just came out this week. Like, scientists are stunned. It's in Science News that there's tons of lithium in pyrite. So much lithium in pyrite that they're blown away. Now, how did we miss this? Like, pyrite is one of the oldest crystals in the book, to geology, to metaphysics, everything. Everybody bought a piece of fool's gold when they were a kid, right? At an amusement park or something. Like, we've known pyrite forever, and we're just discovering as a collective that there's tons of lithium in it. So much so that they might go after it for the production of electric vehicles because they're going after everything for lithium. Now, how was this lithium hidden inside this pyrite? And like, nobody knew. What my point is that we don't know what's in these crystals. We don't always know what trace elements are there. There could be hidden trace elements in something right under our nose that we don't know about. We don't know exactly what's inside an Andara crystal. We don't know exactly what is inside it. If it's glass, we don't know exactly what's in there. There could be trace elements in there that we don't know about. There could be monatomic elements in there. My point is, we don't know. The only way that we know is if we get it lab tested, right? And even if you get something lab tested, for instance, this lithium is a great example. Lithium's so light, it's such a light metal that it will not show up on the more affordable metal analysis testing because it's so light, like lithium and beryllium. Even if a stone's full of it, it won't show up in the lab testing in certain tests. We don't know what is in crystals all the time, right? Did you know that your pyrite that you have is full of lithium and they're just finding this out? So all these tests have to be done for us to know exactly what's inside them. And I think we just let ourselves be like, okay, we don't know what is inside these crystals. There is a great possibility, there's a great possibility that there is a ton of people selling Andara crystals, and I'm putting up air quotes online, that are simply pieces of glass. They're colored glass, they're beautiful, and they're calling them all these names. Like, I just looked at one called like King's Crown Andara, and it's this red one, and it was like over $3,000, and it's a small piece of colored glass. So I think it's highly possible that there are tons of scams out there. I think that it is possible too that there are monatomic elements in crystals, and maybe even in some of the Andara crystals that you might have or might be drawn to. But something that I know is true is that if there was one protocol or one crystal that could just give us all awakening and just give us all multidimensional experiences and just give us all the healing that we need, we would all just be using that crystal or protocol, and we would all be healed, and we would all be in a completely different reality. We cannot find one outer protocol because there's only so far knowledge can take us. There's only so far outer lineages can take us. There's only so far outer teachers can take us. There's only so far science can take us. There's only so far the observation of the natural world can take us. The journey to consciousness and the alchemy of the spirit has to pass through you. It has to pass through you. So it goes knowledge outside, wisdom when we bring it all inside. You have to integrate everything on the outside with who you are on the inside. And that requires you to know thyself. And to know thyself, you have to heal. Right? To know ourselves, we have to go on these journeys inside that nobody on the outside could. They might be able to lead us to the path, but they can't walk us through it. That's the signature of wisdom, is that when you go through these places, only you can go through it. Only you can give birth. Only you can die. There's a point where it's just going to be you, and it's going to be about know thyself. And that's the cultivation of the practitioner. right? When you know yourself and you have your own story and you understand who you are, that's when you can elevate consciousness. That's when you awaken. That's when you enter the higher spiral on the wheel and awaken. So yes, my friend can have any experience if she knows herself. She can create a medicine wheel in her yard where magic happens, where she travels multidimensionally because everything's possible within, right? That singularity in those monatomic elements, that's inside of you. And it's right in your heart, in the present moment, access to all timelines, space lines, dimensions, and realities. But the only way to get there is to know thyself. So there's nothing on the outside that's going to deliver us this salvation. No crystal, no politician, no ideology. The path always passes through within, and that's the cultivation of the practitioner. And you know what? We know thyself, we get more and more in touch with stones. They are an advanced part of the story. The more we know thyself, the more we start to resonate with stones and crystals. And that is, it becomes a beautiful, otherworldly, deeply enriching experience and becomes the heart of healing, the alchemy of the spirit, and the elevation of consciousness. So, thank you all for coming to this episode. Are Andaras a scam or a superconductor? That's my take on it, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thanks for listening.